Good afternoon, student. Today's our topic is CPU scheduling, and in our operating system, this is also a most important topic because in this topic we have some scheduling algorithm. On these algorithm, there are numerical. Okay, and you know in your final paper as well in your MSTs, these algorithms are there. There must be any uh, 5 mark question can be there in your final as well as in your MST. So this is the most important topic in your operating system. Okay, first of all, what is your CPU scheduling is? A simple definition is CPU scheduling is a process of determining which process will on CPU. Okay, to whom the processor is allocated. Okay, and that all scheduling is done by your operating system. Okay, and the name given is CPU scheduling. CPU scheduling is a process of determining which process will own CPU for execution while another process is on hold. Okay, the main task of CPU scheduling is to make sure that whenever the CPU remain idle, the OS at least select one of the process available in your ready queue for execution. Okay. I have written all these concepts on whiteboard also. Okay. And I will explain with the diagram what actually your CPU scheduling is. First of all, definition is a process. It is a process. CPU scheduling is a process for determining which process. Okay, means which job, which task. Okay, which process will own CPU, to whom the CPU is allocated, to which process your CPU is allocated. That concept is called CPU scheduling. Okay, which on CPU for execution while another process is on hold. Now, what this example, if I assume that in my ready queue, okay, we have studied the diagram of state transition. There are ready queue. Okay, there are number of processes P1, P2, P3, P4, and there is a CPU. Okay, these processes are ready. Okay, ready to execute. But these processes are scheduled by an operating system. Okay, these processes, these four processes are scheduled by CPU, by operating system to execute. Okay, but at a time only one process is there for execution at a time. Okay, if two processes are there, there is a mutual exclusion. There is a problem of deadlock. Okay, so CPU scheduling says that CPU is a process of determining which process will own CPU, to whom the CPU is allocated for execution while another process is owned. I assume that there is two processes P1, P2, and there is a processor, that is your central processing unit. But at a time, only one process can hold the processor. Okay, only one process can hold the processor and that will execute. Okay, for time being, another process has to wait because P1 is using a processor, so P2 has to wait. Okay, and this is your CPU scheduling is, and that is done by your operating system. Okay, if there are number of processes, both processes, first process will come, it will execute complete or a little bit, then next process turn will become, okay, then another process term will become, okay. In this manner your scheduling is done, and that concept is called your CPU scheduling. Okay, then next question is need of, why we need CPU scheduling is process scheduling. CPU scheduling is also known as process scheduling. Process scheduling is an essential part of multi-programming. Okay, your CPU scheduling, or we can also say that process scheduling is an essential part of your multi-programming operating system. And in our multi-programming operating system, we have studied there are number of processes, multi-process are there, but they are executed one by one. Okay, so process scheduling is an essential part of multi-programming operating system, such as allow more than one process to be loaded into your executable memory. And here your executable memory is your main memory. Okay, if there are 4 processes, they are loaded into your main memory, all the 4 processes. Then one by one CPU is allocated to them. Okay, so line is there. Such as operating system, OS means operating system allow more than one process to be loaded into the executable memory, and here executable memory is your RAM or your main memory. Okay, I will write here, it's your RAM. At a time, and the loaded process share CPU using time multiplexing. Okay, so CPU will be allocated according to a time sharing, or we can say that time multiplexing. Okay, I will draw the diagram here how your this scheduling will execute. Yesterday we have studied CPU scheduler and this state transition diagram, and this is your process is, and this is your new process or new job. Okay, I will write here new process. And these processes are in your input device. Input device. They are being created. Okay. Next is your main memory, and here are that process that are loaded. P3, P4, main memory, and they are loaded in your main memory. Okay, means these are ready to execute. Okay, they are ready to execute. Here new process is being created, and in if it is being created means it is in a new state. In a yesterday lecture we have studied a state transition diagram, and the first state is your new state, and this is your new state. When it is ready to execute, it's come to a main memory. Okay, in a ready queue, and further when a CPU is allocated, this is your CPU, this is your processor. If I am saying a CPU is allocated to P1 process, mean P1 is in your executable stage. Okay, in running state, and this is in running state. Okay, this is your actual diagram is CPU scheduling done in this manner. This is your ready state, or sorry, new state. Your these process is created. Okay, when it's bring to a main memory means it is in a ready state. It is ready to execute. When a CPU is allocated, and who will allocate the CPU? CPU scheduler. Okay, there is a scheduler. Okay, who will schedule your processes one by one according to their priority. Okay, in this topic in your CPU scheduling, I have told you that there is an algorithm, and that algorithm are your FCFS, first come first serve. shortest job first. Okay, then round robin. Okay, these are the scheduling algorithm. According to that, we will perform our schedule. Okay, means we know we not, but operating system schedule this process according to these algorithms. First comes up, first up. If P1 comes, it will be executed. Another P2 will, then another process. And shorter job is if between these process there is any shortest burst time. Okay, the word is burst. If any one of these process have a burst time, means burst time is your execution time. Okay, if P2 have only 2 millisecond and remaining have more than 2, then P2 is shortest. Okay, shortest. Then first process that will execute means that CPU will be allocated to P2. Okay, these are the algorithms we will study in our next concept. What are they? Before that, the concept is CPU scheduling is when the process is in your main memory, and here we have written a line. Such operating system allow more than one process. Okay, here are more than one process to be loaded into the executable memory. Okay, this is your executable memory, that is your RAM or a main memory at a time, and the loaded process shares CPU using time multiplexing. Okay, so these process share the CPU. This is your CPU is processor. They will share it. Okay, using a time sharing concept also. Okay, or it can be a first come first serve also, or it can be a shortest job first also, or according to round robin. And in round robin, time quantum is there. Time quantum. Okay, time slice will be provided. Okay, in this manner they will share the CPU. Okay, and if your process get executed, okay, terminated and saved in your disk, that is hard disk. Okay, that is in your hard disk. In this manner your process will execute. And this is your question is why we need scheduling. Okay, because each and every process get loaded into your main memory, and time by time these process has to execute. Okay, and CPU scheduler will schedule each and every process and allocate the CPU to them. Okay, this is your CPU scheduling is. Next is your next is CPU input output, also known as IO, input output burst cycle. Okay, CPU input output burst cycle is each and every process. Okay, each and every process start from a CPU burst. If I am saying that there are P1, P2, P3, P4, these are the processes. Okay, and these processes have a burst time. P1 has 10 millisecond ms, P2 has 5 millisecond, P3 has 7 millisecond, and P4 has a 9 millisecond. Okay, means P1 will execute for 10 milliseconds. Okay, P2 will execute for 5 milliseconds, and P3 will execute for 7 milliseconds. Means these are the time given to these processes for execution. Okay, and P4 has 9 milliseconds. Okay? The time is there for execution. So for each and every process, it will, if I am saying about P1, they will start from a CPU burst. Okay, each and every process will start from CPU burst. Means P1 have a CPU burst. Okay, it will execute for 2 milliseconds. If it is 10 millisecond, first it will execute for 2 millisecond, remaining will be 8 millisecond. Okay, then it go for an input output burst. Okay, it will go for an input output, and input output means it is in a waiting state. It will wait. Okay, it is in a waiting state. It will wait for another process to execute. Now, next process CPU burst will execute. Okay, if I am saying that P2 will be execute, okay, and it is of 5 millisecond, and it is also execute for 2 millisecond. Then remaining will be 3 millisecond of which process? P2 process. And again, this process go into a input output burst, means it has to wait. Okay, which process? P2 process. Okay, in this manner, your each and every process start from CPU bus. Beginning will be from CPU bus. It will execute for some amount. There is a time sharing. Okay, multiplexing is there. It will execute for little amount of time. Okay, and the remaining will execute further. Go into an input output bus. Okay, input output bus means it will go into your waiting state. Okay, and bus is your running state. Input output bus, that is your waiting state. Okay, and then P1 has to wait. Another process that CPU is allocated to, another process that is P2, and CPU burst is the starting point of each and every process. CPU burst total time is 5 millisecond, but it uses 2 millisecond and again come to an input output burst. Okay, that is waiting state. In this manner, each and every process will execute and it is terminated in your CPU burst also. Okay, if I am saying that P1 process, I'm talking about only P1 process. P1 start from CPU bus, goes to input output, that is waiting state. Again start from CPU bus. Okay. Again come to input output bus. It may be some another process is in running state. Then it again come to burst, CPU burst, and then it get terminated. Okay. This is last is your terminated. Mean if it is using 2 millisecond, remaining is 8. Here it again run for 4 millisecond. Okay. Again in a waiting state, again remaining will be 4 and it will execute 4 millisecond, and after completing these 8 total 10 millisecond, 2 plus 4 plus 4, then it has to terminate. Which process? P1. And in the similar manner, P2 will start from CPU burst in a waiting state, again come to burst, again waiting state. Okay, this is your CPU input or output burst cycle is, and it's for each and every process. Okay. Next is your CPU scheduling is further divided into two types. Two types of CPU scheduling, and these types further used in your scheduling algorithm, and they are: first is your preemptive scheduling. Okay, what is your preemptive scheduling? Is CPU is allocated to the process for limited time. Okay, that is preemptive. Preemptive scheduling is a CPU is allocated to the process for a limited time. That is the preemptive. Means we can stop each and every process. Example is same. If P1 is there, P2 is there, P3 is there, P4 is there. Okay, and here is the CPU. If CPU is allocated to P1, okay, and it is of 10 millisecond, 6 millisecond, 4 millisecond, and 2 millisecond. Okay, P1 total burst time is 10 millisecond. Okay, we have allocated the CPU for how much time? For only 2 millisecond. Okay, only 2 millisecond. Then we have to preempt. Okay, preempt we can stop, but we cannot. That is, operating system can stop this P1. Okay, and remaining will be a 10 millisecond will a remaining time for a P1 process to execute. Then another process that come in your CPU, because we are sharing the CPU, that is P2. Okay, here is P1 and then P2 we will be in your waiting state. Now P2 will be executing. Okay, and the time allocated is again 2 milliseconds. To which process? P2 process. Okay, so remaining will be your 4 millisecond of P2. Okay, this means we can stop the process. Means operating system can stop the process in between and start another process. That is your preemptive scheduling is. And we have written CPU is allocated to the process for limited time, and we are our operating system is allocating only 2 millisecond time. Okay, it can be a 3, it can be a 4. Okay, according to their priority. Okay, this is the time limit. CPU is allocated to the process for limited time, and that's come in your preemptive. We can stop a process that is in execution state and put in a waiting state and come another process or allocate a CPU to another process. Okay, this is your preemptive scheduling is. Next is your non-preemptive. Second type is your non-preemptive scheduling. And the definition is CPU is allocated to the process till its terminate or switch to waiting state. Non-preemptive is a CPU is allocated to the process till it terminates. Till then, each and every process execute completely. Okay, CPU is allocated to the process till it terminates or switch to waiting state. Okay, that is non-preemptive. We cannot stop any process if it is in execution stage or in a running state. Example is there. Okay, P1, P2, P3, P4. If it take 10 millisecond, CPU is there. If P1 is allocated to CPU, it will execute for complete. Okay, I will draw the diagram here. If there are number of processes P1, P2, P3 and P4 and there is a CPU, if P1 is in a CPU or in a process, okay, if it is of 10 millisecond, it will execute for complete 10 millisecond. Okay, it will execute for complete. If it gets terminated, then another process will be in a CPU or in a processor. It has to complete its complete burst time, that is of 10 milliseconds. That is, we have written CPU is allocated to the process till it terminate or switch to a waiting state. Okay, but actually it is non-preemptive means we cannot stop the process, or an operating system cannot stop any process if it is in running state. It will complete its execution, then another process will be in your processor. Okay, this is your non-preemptive. Non-preemptive means we or operating system not stop the process that is in running state. Okay, if it completes, then it terminates, then another process will be in your C processor or in a process. Okay, and preemptive is we can stop, or your operating system can stop the process. Okay, that is, we have written CPU is allocated to the process for a limited time. Okay, operating system can stop the process, but in your non-preemptive, the process that is in a running state, it cannot be stopped until it's terminated or it's go to your waiting state. Okay, that is your non-preemptive is. Next, in your CPU scheduling, these are the two types of CPU scheduling, and further these are used in your CPU scheduling algorithms. Okay, before that, there are some terminologies in your CPU scheduling, or we can say that there are scheduling criteria. Scheduling criteria and they are, or you can say that these are the CPU terminologies also, because the terminologies are used in your numericals. Okay, first terminology is your CPU utilization. Okay, what is this? This is your keep the CPU as busy as possible. Okay, always your CPU should be busy. Okay, and CPU utilization should be maximum. Then your process will execute more. Okay, so CPU utilization should be maximum. Next is your throughput. Throughput. Number of processes that complete their execution per unit time. Okay, throughput is the number of process is executed in a single amount of time. If I am saying P1, P2, P3, P4, and P5, these are the 5 process is executed in 1 minute. Okay, is executed, these all 5 process is executed in 1 minute. So throughput is 5. Okay, because 5 processes are executing at a particular time. If it is 100, then throughput is 100. If it is 1000, it is 1000 throughput, it says. So maximum throughput should be there. Okay, Throughput is number of processes that complete their execution per unit time. That is your throughput is. Okay, next is your next criteria or terminology, that is turn around time. Okay, short form is TAT. Turnaround time is your amount of time to execute a particular process. Here we are talking about only single process. Turn around time, short form is TAT, amount of time to execute a particular process. If I am saying there is a single process P1, okay, and its turnaround time is 10 millisecond. Okay, I am talking about P1 process, a single process, it will take a 10 millisecond to execute. Okay, that is your turnaround time. How much time it will take to execute? Okay, time to execute a particular process. Okay, there is a wait condition also. If I am saying that P1 is executed for 2 milliseconds, then second P2 comes into the processor, P3 comes into the processor, and then again P1 comes into the process, and it is 4, 6, and 10. Okay, means your P1 takes total 10 millisecond to execute, and there is a formula to calculate your turnaround time, and that formula is TAT, stand for turnaround time. Write down this formula because this formula are used in your manual. Okay, TAT is turnaround time, and it's equal to your completion time minus arrival time. Okay, these value we have to find completion time, and this arrival time should be given in your numerical. Okay, each and every process have their arrival time. If it is not given in your question, then we have to assume an arrival time is 0. Means each and every process, if there are 5 processes, they have an arrival time 0. Okay, means all the process will execute in a 0 millisecond. Start will be 0. Okay, then we have to find completion time. After finding completion time, we have to find a turnaround time. Okay, we will do a numerical, then you can easily calculate these completion time and your turnaround time. Okay, for timing, you note down this formula. Turnaround time is equal to completion time. In short, we can write CT. CT is completion time, and arrival time is your AT. Okay, then fourth is your waiting time. The amount of time a process has been waiting in the ready queue. Okay, and the formula is WT is equal to, sorry, TAT, that is turnaround time minus burst time. Okay, waiting time is amount of time a process, a single process, amount of time a process has been waiting in a ready queue. The process that is in a ready queue, okay, they want a processor to execute, that time is known as waiting time. Okay, if it is in running, that is in execution state, means processor is allocated to that. Okay. Waiting time is amount of time a process has been waiting in a ready queue. Okay. Waiting for a processor. And formula is waiting time is equal to turnaround time TAT minus BT. BT is your burst time. Burst time. This is also given in your numerical part. These values are given in your numerical. Each and every process have its burst time. How much amount that process will take to execute. Okay. Each and every process burst time will be given. Arrival time will be provided. If it is not arrival time, then each process arrival have a 0 millisecond. Okay. And this is your waiting time is. Throughput, first of all, CPU utilization, maximum CPU utilization should be there. Throughput should be maximum. Turnaround time. Okay, turnaround time should be minimum because turnaround time state that amount of time to execute a particular process. Turnaround time is your execution time of a particular process, but each and every process should be complete on time. Okay, so turnaround time should be minimum, waiting time should be minimum. Okay, and next one is your last one, response time. Fifth one is response time. Okay. That is the amount of time it takes from when a request was submitted until the first response is produced. And not the output. Okay, that is your response time is. Response time is amount of time it takes from when a request, any process is making a request for a ready queue. Okay, any process making a request for a ready queue or for execution. Okay, was submitted until the first response is produced. Okay, if I have told you that this P1 process will take 10 millisecond, okay, P1 execute for 2 millisecond, remaining is 8, and again at last P1 again execute, okay, for more 8 millisecond, that is your 14, okay. First of all, P1 execute for 2 millisecond, okay, and this is the first response. At which time? At 2 millisecond. And again it has to wait. This is a waiting time for P1. Waiting time is, that is 6 minus 2, that is 4. Okay. How much time P1 has to wait? For a 4 millisecond. And again P1's turn is there. Okay. Processor is allocated to P1. Okay. First response is provided by any process, that is a response time. Okay. Response time is amount of time it takes from when a request was submitted until the first response is produced. Request is given, processor is allocated to P1, okay, and this time is your response time, okay, but completion time is your 14, okay, of P1 process. Okay, response time is 2 because it's first response of that process. Okay, but its completion time is 14 and waiting time is in between time. How much time it has to wait? Okay, that is a waiting times. Okay, these terminologies we will use in our medical. What are they? First is CPU utilization, second is throughput, third is turnaround time. Okay, next is your waiting time, and last is your response time. Okay, now I told you that there should be a optimization criteria, and that optimization criteria is your CPU utilization should be maximum, your throughput should be maximum, your turnaround time should be minimum, and your waiting time should be minimum, and response time should be minimum. And maximum are your first two one, that is CPU utilization is maximum, your system is good. Your throughput is maximum, your system is good. And if your turnaround time is maximum, your system is a poor system, or your memory is low. Okay, because its turnaround time is maximum, but it should be minimum. If it is minimum, your system is good. If your waiting time is minimum of each and every process, your system is good. Okay, so response time is also be minimum. Next is your algorithm. That is CPU scheduling algorithms are there. CPU scheduling algorithms. Okay. First algorithm that will be in your CPU scheduling is FCFS. Okay, stood for first come, first come, first serve. Okay, next is your SJF, that is shortest job first. Okay. Third one is your priority scheduling. Priority scheduling. Fourth one is your round robin. Okay, in short, it is RR. Fifth one is your multi-level queue. Multi-level queue scheduling. Okay, these are the 5 scheduling algorithms that we will study, and we will do some numerical on that. Okay, first is your first come first serve. It is simple. Okay, and further in your shortage of first, there are further 2 techniques. I have told you that there is a preemptive and non-preemptive. Okay, from these algorithm we will perform a preemptive concept also, and a non-preemptive concept also. Okay, FCFS always work on non-preemptive. Non-preemptive. Okay, means operating system cannot stop any process that is in running state. So FCFS works on non-preemptive, and further these shorter jobs priority round robin works on your preemptive as well as on your non-preemptive. Okay. Now we will start our first numerical. Okay. Watch it carefully, because it is an easy process if you understand it. Okay. First is question is there. There is a processes are given. There are 3 processes, P1, P2, P3, and further their burst time. burst time, that is BT, is given. P1 burst time is 24 millisecond, P2 is 3 millisecond, and P3 is also 3 millisecond. And if there is no arrival time, okay, arrival time is not given, then we have to assume that its arrival time. If it is not given in question, then we have to assume its arrival time is all process have arrived at zero. Okay, 0 millisecond mean any process can be arrived at a starting because it's arrival. If I am saying I have to arrive at 2 p.m. and my friend have to arrive at 3 p.m. So the arrival time is allocated to both of them. Okay, I have to arrive at 2 and my friend have to arrive at 3. But in this, all the process arrival is 0. If it is not given, then we have to assume 0. If it is given, their arrival time should be provided. Okay. So in first question, we assume that its arrival is 0. And further, now the first step is we have to draw a Gantt chart. Okay, Gantt. Gantt or double T, we can say that this is Gantt chart. Okay, this is a bar. We have to make a bar like this. Okay, and we have to start a process from which time, that is 0, because arrival time is 0. Okay, we are arriving a process at 0, and according to which scheduling algorithm, that is first come first serve. Which process come first? That is P1. 1, 2, 3. First process is P1. We will write here P1. Okay. And up to which time it has to execute? Its total burst time means this is the execution time. It has to execute for total 24. Means it will execute for 24 millisecond. Okay, because it is first come first serve, and I have told you that this is a non-preemptive scheduling concept. Non-preemptive, we cannot stop. Means operating system cannot stop this process. Okay, it will execute for complete 24. Okay, next process that comes is it will execute completely. Okay, it is executed completely, terminated after complete its burst time. Then next turn is P2, and its arrival is 3. We will add this 3 with the 24. Okay, 24 plus 3 is 27. Means P2 will execute for 3 burst time, 3 millisecond, but it will complete at 27. Okay, completion time is 27. Then next is P3. Okay, and this is also executed completely and terminated. Now P3 is there. P3 have a arrival time, burst time 3, and this will execute for 3 milliseconds, and we will add with 27 remaining 3, that will be your 30, because P3 will take 3 millisecond of burst time to execute. Okay. P1 execute for 24. Okay. P2 will execute for 3, for we have to take a remaining next millisecond will be added. 24 plus 3 is 27. Okay, because it will take total 3 burst time. Then P3 also take 3 burst time. Then we have to again add remaining 3. Okay, total completion is your 30. Of which process? Here we write completion time. Completion time, that is CT. Okay, P1 completion time is 24. So we will write here 24. P2 completion time is 27. So we will write here 27. P3 completion time is 30, and we will write in front of P3 completion time is 30. Okay. Then TAT, that is turn around time, and the formula is TAT is equal to completion time minus arrival time. Okay, completion time minus arrival time, and this is your completion time, this is your arrival time, and we will write here 24 minus 0. This is completion, this is arrival, and your turnaround time is 24. Next, P2 turnaround time is 27 minus 0. Means completion minus arrival is 27. Then P3 turnaround time is 30 minus 0. And it is 30. Then we have to find average. Average TAT. That is average turnaround time. And it's your total. 4 plus 7 is 11. Then 2 plus 2, 4, 4 plus 3, 7, 7 and 8. That is 81. Divide by 3. Okay. And then we have to find the average. Okay. This is your average formula. Then next is your waiting time. WT is your waiting time and its formula is TAT minus BT. That is turnaround time minus burst time. Okay, so your TAT is 24 of P1, this one, minus burst time is also 24. And your waiting time is U. Okay, so see here in your Gantt chart, P1 starts from 0. So it hasn't to wait. Okay, P1 hasn't to wait because it is started at 0. And next we will find a P2. How much time P2 has to wait? That is turnaround time of P2, that is 27. Okay, turnaround time of P2, that is 27 minus burst time, that is 3. And your P2 has to wait for which time? For 24 milliseconds. Then P2 started. P2 has to wait for 24 milliseconds. Okay, then P2 started. Okay, but arrives at 0. Okay, question is it's arrived at 0. But how much time it has to wait? That is our 24 milliseconds. Then P2 has to wait for 20 milliseconds. Then P3 turnaround time is 30. Okay, P3 turnaround time is 30 minus burst time. Burst time is 0. That is, burst time is 3. This one. That is 27. Okay, P3 has to wait for 27 milliseconds. First P1 execute, then P2 execute, and P3 starts at after 27. Okay, for this time, okay, for 27 millisecond, P3 has to wait. Okay, and then we again find the average waiting time. That is your 11 and 51 divided by 3. And it is near about 17. Okay, an average waiting time of your peace process is 17. Okay, question is there. Process is given, burst time is given, arrival can be there. Okay, then we have to find average turnaround time and average waiting time. Okay, and this is your numerical is of first come, first served. Okay, next algorithm is your shortest job first. Now I will give you a question. Okay. Next algorithm is shortest job first. In short, it is SJF. Okay. There are three processes. Okay, four process is there, and its burst time is 7, 4, 1, 4, and its arrival time is, that is 80, is 0, 2, 4, 5. Okay, and we have to find the average turnaround time and your arrival time. First of all, we have to draw a Gantt chart. And I have told you that this shorter job works on preemptive as well as non-preemptive. Okay. First of all, we will perform on non-preemptive, SGF non-preemptive. Okay. This is SGF non-preemptive type is this. Okay, first is your process P1 is there. Okay, now we have to see a arrival time. Okay, now we have to see an arrival time. So, and concept is non-preemptive. In question, there is a word given. Your process, you have to perform this algorithm with the concept of shortage of first non-preemptive. Okay. So P1 is a process, its arrival is 0. So P1 has to start at 0 arrival time, and up to which time it has to execute, it will take total 7 milliseconds. So not preemptive. Non-preemptive means we cannot, means operating system cannot stop this process. So P1 will execute for complete 7. Okay, complete 7. It cannot be stopped. Okay, this will execute. Okay, then next process that will arrive between these 7 milliseconds. Okay, between these 7 milliseconds, P2 will arrive at 2. It can be arrived because we have arrived till 7 millisecond. Okay, and your P2 have an arrival 2, means it can also arrive. Then P3 at 4, it can also be arrived, and P4 at 5, because its arrival is 5, it can also arrive. But who will arrive next? That is shortest job, whose burst time, this one is shortest, whose process has a shortest burst, that is P3, because it is shortest burst is 1 only. Okay, burst, shortest burst. So P3 is the next process who has to arrive for how much time? Only for 1 millisecond, means it will take only 1 millisecond. 7 plus 1 is 8. Next process that has to arrive, that is, this is also completed. Next process that has to arrive is these both P2 and P4. P4 is arrive 2 and P4 is arrival at 5. These both can arrive. And now we have to check shortest job first. This burst is 4. This is 4 burst time. And P4 have also a 4. Means there is a same burst time. Okay, 4, 4 of both the process. Now we have to check which process come first. Okay, which process come first. Now we have to check our first algorithm we have to perform that is first come first serve. Okay, which process come first? P2. If there is a burst time is same of both the processes or more than that, then we have to check which process come first, and the process that is come first is your P2. P2 will be there in your Gantt chart, and how much time it execute for 4 millisecond, and it will complete at 12. Okay, 8 plus 4 is your 12, and remaining is P4, and it will take 4 bursts, means your P4 will take your total, it will complete at 6 millisecond. Now we have to find completion time, then turnaround time, okay, then waiting time. Okay, now you have to solve it on your copy and tell me the average waiting time. Okay, solve this and message me the average waiting time. Okay, P1 completion time is 7. Okay, because it is completed at 7 millisecond. P2 completion time is 12. I have written at 12 here. Okay, its completion time when it is completed, that is 12. Okay, P3 completion time is 8, and here I have written 8, and its completion time is 8. Okay. P4 completion time is 16, and P4 is completed at your 16 millisecond. This is your completion time is. Now we can find a turnaround time, and turnaround time is equal to your completion time minus arrival time. So 7 minus 0 is 7. 12 minus 2 is 10 of P2. A minus 4 is 4 of P3. 16 minus 5 is 11 of P4. Okay, then we have find it average turnaround time. Add it, divide by 4 because these are 4 process. Okay, 32 is total, divide by 4 is equal to 8. This is your turnaround time. Waiting time. Formula is turnaround time minus completion time. So 7 minus 7 is 0. Here it is 0. Okay. 10 minus 12. Sorry, wait. Turnaround waiting time is your turnaround time minus burst time. Sorry, I have said that turnaround time minus completion. Its formula is turnaround time minus burst time. 7 minus 7 is 0. 10 minus 4 is 6. 4 minus 1 is 3. And 11 minus 4 is 7. And we have to find the average. Okay, average of your all these 4 processes. Total is 16. Divide by 4 and your average is 4. Okay, this is your shortage of first with non-preemptive concept. Okay, now I will rub this. I will give you next question. Okay, and now we have to find the shortest job first with a preemptive concept. Preemptive means the process has to wait. Here we have to draw a Gantt chart. Okay. Now this is the same question is there. Now we have to perform a shorter job first with a preemptive concept. Okay. So P1 is there, arrival is 0 and burst is 7. Okay. Now we or your operating system perform this shorter job in preemptive manner, means it can stop the process Okay, it can stop. When another process arrival is there, then CPU or your your operating system can stop your previous process if their arrival time is of another process. Now P1 has to arrive at 0, and we have to see if there is any process that arrival time is 0 of any of that process. Okay, we have to check the arrival time. Okay, first process P1 has to arrive at 0. We can write P1 at 0. Okay, and its total burst is 7. Total burst is 7. But next process, that is your P2 process, has to arrive at 2 milliseconds. Okay, your P2 process has to arrive at 2 milliseconds. Then we have to execute our P1 process only for 2 milliseconds because next turn is of P2. So the remaining burst will be your 7 minus 2, that is 5. Okay, watch it carefully. This is your important concept. P1 arrival is 0, we arrived it. Okay, but next turn, next P2 will has to arrive at 2 milliseconds. But P1 burst is 7. For that time, we have to execute that P1 process only for 2 milliseconds. Okay, because next turn is of P2. Okay, P2 at 2 and okay, and next process that will arrive is at 4 milliseconds. Okay, next will be at 4 milliseconds. So again we have to execute this P2 for 2 milliseconds, means total will be 4. P1 for 2 milliseconds, remaining will be 5. Then again we will execute when its turn comes. Okay, then next P2 has to arrive at 2. We arrived it. Okay, at 2. Okay, for what millisecond? For only 2, because at 4 P has to arrive. So we arrived P2 for 2 milliseconds. We added 2. Okay, and remaining is 2 there. Okay, now at 4 P has to arrive at 4. Okay, we arrived till 4. Now whose turn is there? P3 turn. P3 is there, and for what burst time it has to arrive? Only for 1. And if there is 1, we will add 1 and it goes to 5. Means your P3 will executed completely. It's terminated. Okay, P3 is terminated. Now at 5, your P4 is there. Now it is the most important step. Now at 5 your turn is of P4. Its burst is 4. Okay, and now we can say that all the process can arrive because it's arrive at 0. Its turn can also become at 2. Its turn can also become at 5. Its turn is there. Okay, because process is arrived till 5. All these process can arrive. All these process, its 0 arrival is, its 2 arrival is, it is completed. This one is completed, and its arrival is 5. Okay, these 3 can arrive now, but who will arrive? Whose burst time is shortest? And this P1 process has a shortest time 5, P2 has 2, and P4 has 4. And whose shortest burst is of P2. So we will write here P2 up to which time it will arrive, up to 2 arrival. So 5 plus 2, it is 7. Okay, and P2 is completed. Next turn, these two both can arrive, P1 as well as P4. Okay, these both can arrive, but whose shortest job is that process will arrive, and whose shortest is, this is 4, this is 5, and shortest is 4. So P4 will arrive, and it will arrive till complete 4 and that is 11. 7 plus 4, it is 11. Okay. And remaining is your P1. P1 will execute its complete burst, that is your 5 remaining, and it will go till 16. Okay. This is your Gantt chart is. Okay. Now we have to find average waiting time and turnaround time. Now you have to find the completion time. I will write here. P1 completion time is 16 because it is completing at 60 milliseconds. P2 completion time is 7. P3 completion time is 5. P4 completion time is 11. Okay, the turnaround time is your completion minus arrival 16. 7 minus 2, 9. 5 minus 4, 1. 11 minus 5, 6. Then we have to find a total. And the next is your waiting time. Waiting time is your turnaround time minus burst time. Means 16 minus 7 is 9. 9 minus 4 is 5. 1 minus 1 is 0. Okay, this is a waiting time. Then 11 minus 4 is 7. Okay, so count it and find average waiting time. That is 7, 5 is your 12, 12 plus 9, that is 21, and divided by 4. Near about 5.2. Okay, approximately this is your value is average waiting time. Okay. And this is your second concept in your CPU scheduling, that is your shortest job first. Have you understand all these concepts? Okay, I will upload this video. If there is any problem, I will upload this video tomorrow. You can watch it, and if you have any question, you can message me. Okay, at my WhatsApp number also. Okay, note down these two scheduling algorithm. Okay, Rohan answered it. Turnaround time is 7 and waiting time is 3. थोड़ा चेक कर लेना